Well, hello there, YouTube. I was talking with my brother and my friend, Matt Bertho, voiced by Matt. He's an awesome guy that I hired to help me put more of me on display with my messaging. And he's great at this. He's really awesome. And we were talking about kind of this exercise that I wanted to share with y'all. Not to give away too much of his thunder, but I'm going to dub it the plus side. How do we get on the plus side, right? And so we did 2 columns on a piece of paper. And he goes, I want you to think about, itemize, make a list of situations, moments when you felt less than, when you felt lack or fear or ashamed. And you just start putting that down on paper. I'm like, okay. I'm going through it and I'm writing. And I noticed for me, a lot of them were people. One of my best friends overdosed and died. Another really good friend overdosed and died. My best friend committed suicide. My dad used to beat the shit out of me. Other abuse in my past, in my childhood. And they all, not all, but most people. And then also times where I didn't live up to who I should be. That's that shame part, right? Like, early on with my relationship with my wife, there wasn't infidelity, but gosh, it was close. I wasn't behaving the way I should be. Previous relationships, et cetera, et cetera. And I'm just itemizing all this, and I'm like feeling it. And so that's the bad side, right? And he goes, then I want you to think about the plus side. What did you learn from this? Like, how are you better now? Like one of the things that came up was like in North Texas, our little church imploded, Living Springs, because of the egos of men, the pastorship versus the eldership. They were in contention with one another for a year and a half, 18 months, and nobody knew it. That's one of the things that really pissed me off. Nobody knew it. It's just business as usual as a congregant and as a member of the worship team, while the pastor and the elders were locked in battle. And I understand why they didn't tell us. I think on the one hand, they didn't want people to be negatively impacted by it. I think on the other hand, they didn't want the church and the business of the church to be negatively impacted by it. But the church imploded. I have strong negative feelings around that. And I had stopped going to church for about 6 months because our sermons had gone from reading the Bible to self-help. Here's 3 ways you can love your brother in the Lord this week, and cherry-picked verses in the whole 9. Boy, in context, right? And so I stopped going, and we didn't go to church for like 6 months. And I woke up one Sunday morning, and the Spirit was like, "Get dressed, you're going to church." I was like, "I don't do that anymore." It's like, "Boy, did I stutter. Put pants on, you're going to church." I was like, "Okay, we're going to church." Make a pot of coffee. I'm getting ready. I tell my wife, I'm like, "Hey, babe, wake up. We're going to church. Wake up the kids." She's like, "Well, we don't go to church anymore." So we're going. We're going this week. And that was the service that the church imploded. It all came to a head. The pastor started yelling at the elders from the podium, and the elders stood up and started yelling back. And there were two sides of the room. There's a walkway down the middle, 2 sets of chairs, the left and the right. And I used to sit all the way right up front. Front row is where I had sat from the day I walked into that church. We hadn't been there in 6 months, so somebody else took our good seats, and we were all the way in the back. And the father even had his hand in that, because I had the perspective, I could see the whole room. And as people, the pastor and the elders started yelling at each other, people stood up, started finger pointing and screaming at each other, and they chose sides. They shifted. People were getting up and changing seats, the pastor's side over here and the other side over here. And it was just split right down the middle like the Red Sea, man. And people are screaming at each other. And I looked at my wife and I said, let's go. And even that pissed me off. I was like, why did you need me to see this? Why? And I was so mad, man, because I didn't have anybody to read me the Bible anymore. I was screaming at God, like, what is wrong? What is wrong with you? How could you do this? That still small voice. How long have you owned my word? My whole life. Then why haven't you read it? Oh. So I started reading the Bible for myself. And then I got even more pissed off because there's all kinds of stuff in here that nobody ever taught me before. The father was like, yeah, well, it's your job to know my word. It's your job to know what I say. You got to know the word and the word made flesh. And the reason, one of the reasons he had us there on that day was so that I could see what the egos of men can do to the body of Christ when there's a critical disagreement between the pastor and the elders. And as a result, see, I had been drumming in the worship band, and that was healing and cathartic for me, because I'd played drums in these metal bands, satanic heavy metal. And I was good at drums, and I was good at being just a heathen, good at it. By pick a key performance indicator, I was good at it, man. But it wasn't good for me. It wasn't good for my soul, and it wasn't good for all the people that I came in contact with, because I was leading them away from the truth, not towards the truth. So then I started playing drums in this little worship band, man. And I thought I had them licked. I thought I could get out of it. The third time we went to church, the pastor corners me and he says, hey, I understand you play drums. I said, I do. He said, we've been praying for a drummer for 2 years for the worship band. He puts his arm around me. Pastor Dave, I remember you, homie. And we're good. I hold no animosity towards you. In fact, I have so much empathy for you now as a pastor. Bless you, brother. I was pissed at the time, but context, age, experience. Puts his arm around me and he says, would you prayerfully consider playing drums for us? I grew up in the church, even though I ran away from it. I know what that means. That's a direct order from a pastor. I said, yeah, I'll think about it. So I go home and I'm sitting on the couch bitching to my wife, I don't really want to do this. She says, well, then don't do it. And I said, well, I feel like I'm supposed to. She said, well, then do it. Shut up about it. Okay. I said, here's how I'll fix this. So I sent an email to the pastor with a bunch of videos of me playing drums in these heavy metal bands, thinking there's no way he's going to want me doing that on his stage. Well, he forwarded that email to the worship leader. What's up, Floyd? And Floyd emailed back and said, oh, hell yeah, get this guy. He's awesome. And I got roped into playing drums in a worship band. And I would bring my big Tama kit, 2 kick drums, 3 mounted toms, 2 floor toms, 2 snare drums, 17 cymbals to church. Took 17 trips from the truck to the stage to set that drum set up. Stuff in both hands. Get there at 7 o'clock in the morning, set up. We'd rehearse at 8:30. First service was at 10:30. We'd have everything broken down by 1 o'clock, 2 o'clock in the afternoon, every Sunday. And it was a way for me to use the giftings and talents and delights that the Father had given to me for his glory as a form of atonement, even though Messiah had already paid for all that. I still feel like I got to get onto the plus side. I've led hundreds of thousands of people astray. I need to get hundreds of thousands of people back towards the Most High. Even though I know he's not keeping score, I just feel it. I feel it in my bones. And so I could go to church, I could play drums, and then the church imploded. And I don't have an outlet for this anymore. And I haven't played drums publicly in a decade, probably a decade. And so fast forward, what's the plus side of this church hurt? Well, I start reading the Bible for myself. I start seeing things in here that nobody ever told me before. I start doing things that most believers don't do. I relocate, pack up my whole family, move from Dallas to here. We pay cash for this place. We start finding people to do life with that are like-minded, high ideological alignment. I meet Pastor Joe Fox, Shofar Mountain. Start learning with him, from him, but also with him, reproof and instruction. And about 15 months ago, he ordains me as a pastor. Talk about full circle. Well, I'm still not playing drums, but for me. Then I'm scrolling Instagram one day, and I see this guy preaching on stage. He's talking about how apple trees don't eat apples, and pear trees don't eat pears. And your fruit is not for you. Your fruit is for everybody else. Your fruit is for everybody else. Your job, the apple tree's job, is to stay watered and extract the nutrients from the soil so that it can produce good fruits to feed the weary passerby. Just laid me open. Your gift isn't for you. It's for the kingdom, to bring glory to Elohim. And so I'm at the office a couple weeks ago, and there's my big black Tama drum set. And I'm sitting down to warm up, and the Spirit is like, you need to call this guy that I work with, brother, friend. I'm like, well, I don't want to do that. It's like, well, you need to call him. So I text him. I said, hey, man, what are you doing? Can you come to the studio? And he's like, yeah, I'll be there in 5 minutes. I'm like, oh, no. And he gets there. He said, what are we doing? I said, I'm supposed to play a song for you. He's like, okay. What are we doing? I handed him a set of headphones. And Your Great Name by Natalie Grant at 25% increased tempo. Because, dude, worship music is so boring sometimes. And so, song starts, I start playing. He's got his eyes closed. And I play like fast. 30-second note at 150 BPM, double bass, tom fills. I'm throwing blast beats in here. I'm playing with everything that I've got over this 3.5 minute track. Worshiping. I get done. And my hand is shaking. I've played this song thousands of times. And I can't hold my hand flat. Because there's something happening, there's a release happening here. And I look at him, he had his eyes closed. And he opens his eyes, and he's weeping. And he's like, thank you for sharing that with me. It's that old, you don't light a lamp and put it underneath a basket. And it just hit me. I've been doing that for a decade because I've been afraid of the judgment of me playing and bearing my soul to Elohim on display amongst all these people, because all these people hurt me a decade ago, and therefore I don't want to share it anymore. But it's not my gift. It's Yah's gift. And he gave it to me to use for his glory. And so now, full circle, I get to be in a position where I can take the negative things that have happened to me and find the plus side and use that to serve Elohim and love my neighbor as myself and learn the lessons in the process. And so now, full circle, we have a church building. And I have church drums. And I'm going to start playing church drums again. And I'm both incredibly excited and scared shitless about it. And I've played shows in front of thousands of people. But the honesty and vulnerability that comes from drumming in front of a few dozen people that I know and love, putting that part of me on display, that's the scary part. But it's the realization that that part isn't me. That part is Yah in me. And if I don't share it with people, I'm not being a good steward of that. I'm putting my lamp underneath the basket. So I bring this to you, the plus side, to ask you to consider, in what ways are you allowing previous experiences and previous hurts to hide your lamp under that basket that's not allowing you to experience release from that hurt in the first place. Because that when I shared that one song with that one brother, a crack formed in the wall of the dam that had been holding all of that bullshit back. And it feels good. And so how are you not experiencing that release of this negative emotion, this negative energy, because you're still wrapped up in that? And how is that keeping you from serving Yah and loving your neighbor in the process to be that thing that he made you to be in the first place? And so itemize your hurts. Make a list, write them out, and then look for the lesson or the benefit that came from that. It'll give you so much perspective, and it'll show you the things that you've been holding on to that you shouldn't be. And it'll show you the areas that you should be executing on that you haven't been. The plus side. I appreciate y'all. Shalom.